A year and a half. Yeah, I agree.
I got an extra seat here.
We really could, because we got grit.
Invite Miss Winchell to come.
Miss Winslow, you want to sit up here, hon? We got an extra seat. Come on. Come on up here. You show them? This is the ice. This is the hot seat. Well, it's hotter over on his seat, though.
We thought you'd be an improvement.
Then David or me?
It's just that they didn't. They got somebody to do it for them.
I don't think David is coming on. He said last night he couldn't make it, so.
Should we overflow people into the...
That's right on my back.
Okay.
Do we have a sign-in list? I'll get it. Would you get it? Yeah.
You know the bank.
Well, he'll announce it. And we might as well turn the fans on too.
Hey, Tom. We are just supposed to be sitting here and asking questions. But he said,
Give me your outside.
Oh wait, I stole it. It is yours.
You didn't 32. 30. You didn't know you get put to work tonight, did you?
Tom, you
haven't seen my bill Good evening, everyone. If we could go ahead and call our meeting to order, and we'll begin by asking Ms. Hoffman to take the roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Here.
Mrs. Conway?
Here.
Mrs. Singer-Erdley?
Here.
Mr. Lesby? Mr. Showalter?
Here.
Mrs. Tingle-Sames?
Here.
Mrs. Tackett?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
here.
We have a quorum. Thank you all very much for attending this public hearing this evening. First off, I want to be clear for the audience that since this is advertised as a public hearing for the council to listen, the council can take no action tonight. So there's not going to be a vote. We've convened the council for the sole purpose of listening to you all and gathering public input. So again, there will be no action at the end of this meeting. But what we want to do is gather information about a possible ordinance relating to homeowners associations. If I could take a few minutes on the front end of our meeting to kind of set up why we're here tonight and why we're at this point, and the information that I think your city council is trying to achieve. One thing that I do need to announce, our fire marshal is here tonight because we were concerned about, we thought we'd have a big crowd, and what we need to do, our fire marshal has said that we're okay with the size crowd we have as long as we don't block that back door. So, so if you all could just either come in far enough or make sure we don't block the door, then the fire marshal is going to let me go ahead and have this meeting with this many of you. And we're going to start the fans and try and get some ventilation through the crowd. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I'd like to emphasize that there is no ordinance that has been prepared and no ordinance that has been presented to the council yet. We are in the stage of trying to gather information to see if there should be an ordinance about homeowners associations. We've had a number of problems that we've discussed with the council, but I do want to emphasize that there is no ordinance that has been prepared. I had a number of citizens and some council members indicate to me that they thought we would have an unhappy or an angry crowd tonight. When the reality of what we're trying to do tonight is simply listen to you and gather comment and gather information for what may or may not be a future action by the council. So we very much appreciate you all responding this well. It's helpful to your city council, it's helpful to the administration when we can hear from as many as you all as we possibly can. We've learned that the worst public policy that we generate is public policy that we implement too quickly. And the best public policy that we generate typically is when we do it with the benefit of a fully informed electorate helping guide what our decisions are. And that's a part of the process. I wanted to make several things real clear on the front end. What brings us to this point? It is certainly not the desire of the city council to go searching for issues that may not need a solution. We don't go looking for problems, and we certainly don't look for issues that might affect someone's relationship with their home or their relationship with their neighbors. We take that very seriously. What brings us here tonight are existing problems, and existing problems that we as a city have faced for a very long time, for a number of years. The other thing that brings us to this point are citizen complaints. And we are, especially of late, have been inundated with citizen complaints that are coming from neighborhoods or subdivisions where there are large common areas, areas that do not belong, in your mind, they don't belong specifically to your property, but they are commonly owned by a neighborhood or a citizen and their neighbors. And those complaints have risen to a level that we've shared those concerns with the city council, and we're looking for the best way to meet the citizens' needs and the citizens' request in a way that we think is both legal and appropriate and allows us to operate the city in a financially responsible way. We're here in an effort to be responsive to the reality that we all share. We live in the fastest growing county in Kentucky. By extension, we probably live in the fastest growing city in Kentucky. The census data is only available at the county level, so but we believe Georgetown is probably one of the fastest growing cities in Kentucky. That growth factor presents a number of challenges for each of you in your personal lives, for those of you that may be in business, in the real estate industry particularly. All this affects you. When we have the fastest growing community in Kentucky, I think we have an obligation to the people that we're inviting to move into our community, or those of you who may live in one neighborhood and wish to build a bigger home or move to a bigger home, or those of you that might be at my stage of life where you're looking to maybe downsize and move into yet a different home. I think we have a real obligation to make sure that people know the ground rules that are in place for the most important investment that most of us make in our lifetimes. I've gotten some emails from several of our citizens, and they've actually been very helpful, and they've led me to want to talk with you just a little bit about what this is not. This is not an effort by the city to start making homeowners association pay for paving of streets. I think that's been a common fear that I've heard from a number of people. Paving of city streets, once they're accepted into the city's network, is 100% of the city's responsibility, and it will continue to be so. This is not an effort to push off repaving expenses on homeowners association. In the same vein, it is not an effort to make you responsible for your sidewalks in any way that you're not already responsible as an individual property owner. It's not an effort to make you responsible for the street lighting. Now, there are some homeowners associations in some neighborhoods that have specifically made a decision to upgrade the type of light posts they have. And those were done by their own private agreement, and those are funded by their homeowners association. But in terms of those basic services, this has nothing to do with that. What this is an effort for all of us, the city, the homeowners, developers, realtors, all of us that are living in this community, to understand the rules about who owns what property and who is responsible for the maintenance of that property. We've got a number of examples that we can cite. When I first came into office this year, actually before I got into office, on Christmas Day, the sign was hit out in front of the colony. I saw on the sign-up sheet that a number of y'all are here from the colony. That sign lay in rubble for about a month until the other side of the entrance was also hit by a vehicle. That lay in rubble as well. We got repeated phone calls for an extended period of time about why we were allowing that eyesore to lay in rubble. And when we took those calls, our answer was always the same. It doesn't belong to the city. It's on private property. Legally, we're not supposed to go on private property and make improvements or make expenditures with public funds. It's against the law for us to do that. We let that rubble stay in place for a long time until one of the colony residents convinced me, and I thought he did a great job with this, that there was probably a public safety hazard with all that rubble laying just inside of a curb, and somebody could jump over the curb in their vehicle and hit that rubble. So from a public safety point of view, I asked our Public Works Department to go out and just pick up the rubble. That we couldn't fix the entrance because it's on private property, but we would move the rubble. We did that. We got a couple of phone calls here in City Hall from residents wanting to know why we were taking their rocks from in front of the entrance. And we assured these folks that we weren't taking the rock, we were moving them. And we actually moved those rocks to our Public Works Department, and we are storing them. So whenever the residents of the colony choose to make those repairs, we have your rocks, and we'd be glad to share them back with you. But and this is a serious subject. I'm not making light of it at all, even though that was a pretty vivid example. There are so many common areas, for example, in the colony. The beautiful wide streets as you enter have nice wide green medians that don't belong to the city. Neighbors have asked me out there, who owns them? And my response is, you do, along with your neighbors. And it's not appropriately the city's responsibility to mow and maintain some of those common areas. We certainly can do that. The City Council has the authority to direct us to take those steps. But that puts us on a path where if we spend too much money in the maintenance of private property, then our answer sometimes is going to be, we can't hire that extra policeman that we need. We can't hire the extra firemen that we need because we already spent that money maintaining private property. It's not appropriate for the city to do. We're always concerned. We always want to pay attention to your concerns. And I've listened to realtors. I read the article carefully about Mr. Hartley and Ms. Tackett providing information at a recent meeting of realtors. And those things resonate with me. I've owned a business here in Georgetown. I think this council goes to great lengths to be very pro-business. and support people's professional exercises. But we laid out the timeline that we did, and we actually talked through this, and we gave the council a 20-week timeline. And I know some of y'all expressed concern about the length of that timeline. We did that for one reason only, and that was as a courtesy to our citizens. We wanted to reach out. We wanted to engage the public. We wanted to engage all the various constituent groups in a meaningful way so that when we do prepare an ordinance, it's reflective of everybody's desires and we have the right information. We have the ability to go ahead and craft an HOA ordinance and bring it to the council immediately. And they could have first reading and then second reading within another 2 weeks, publish it. We could have this process wrapped up in about 2.5 weeks. We didn't think that that was being responsible to you all in terms of giving you a chance to weigh in and make your opinions heard. So the only reason that we established that timeline was as a courtesy to you all. I can understand some's desire to make it a shorter process, and we're willing to follow your all's wishes on that. But we laid out that timeline for a very specific reason. When I read the numerous comments about a concern that our consideration of this ordinance over a 20-week time period would have a chilling effect on the market, a chilling effect on sales. And it was specifically cited the uncertainty that it might introduce into the market. And actually, I think it's exactly that uncertainty that your city council is trying to answer, so that when someone considers moving into a neighborhood, they know with a degree of certainty what the homeowner situation is. They know that there's a registry of homeowners association. They know that there's a place where they can find that contact information. They know where they need to find all the data so you can make a completely informed purchase decision. Instead of introducing uncertainty into the market, what the council is trying to accomplish is to create certainty for people as they go forward. I even agree with one of the quotes. Nobody wants to go into a neighborhood not knowing what they're going to be facing. Actually, I think that statement perfectly sums up why we're considering looking at an ordinance to regulate homeowners associations, to eliminate that uncertainty, and to put everybody on a level playing field about the information that they have prior to the time they make a purchase decision. Some of the HOA issues that we face, best we can tell, we don't even know exactly how many homeowners there are in Georgetown. We don't know the contact information for every homeowners association. One of the things that we're wanting to accomplish is a repository of all that information. We know that we have some homeowners association in Georgetown that are functioning beautifully. Their bylaws have been adopted, their board members have been appointed, they're collecting their dues, they're maintaining common areas, and they're working exactly as they were designed to. We have a number of them where they are not operating as they were intended to operate. We have some where they may be partially functional. We've got some cases where a subdivision may have begun with an HOA, but over the years, as officers change and people move, the interest has waned, and some of those HOAs have gone defunct. It's important for the city because when a developer brings plans for a development to planning and zoning and ultimately to the council or the Scott County Fiscal Court, the developer makes certain promises in that development plan and on those plats. And where a promise has been made that certain common areas will be maintained by a homeowners association, we want to be able to make sure those promises are kept for your protection and for the city's protection. And we think it's essential. We have common areas that are not maintained well or at all. And boy, do we have some horror story pictures of some areas in the colony that I'm sure you all are all far too aware of. Deed restrictions that may not be being enforced, which could affect the value of your property. Funds for maintenance not being collected. I've mentioned no identity of HOAs with no names, addresses, or phone numbers. We think each of you need to have this information to know who to contact for issues that are covered and what your recourse is if those promises are not being kept. We're concerned that sometimes homeowners might not be getting the correct information. And we've had people before the council in the last week who have purchased property where the original plat clearly has a note that the lots they were purchasing had certain features on those lots that were to be privately maintained in perpetuity. Each of those homeowners now has an expectation that the city just fix their problem, even though that's not what was on the original plat. Realtors do a great job of informing your clients, but sometimes this information is a little bit hard to dig out, and we want to make sure that potential purchasers are protected. We've heard repeatedly some developers, some others saying, don't worry about the HOA, they don't enforce it. But we think that property owners have a right to that information. We also have a bit of a trap that we face. If citizen complaints get loud enough about a particular area needing attention, and if we truly confirm that we think it's a public safety issue, if the growth has gotten to the point where it blocks a line of sight, or there are things that we think affect the safety of an area. On normal private property, if the city is forced to go in and make those repairs, we can then calculate the cost of making those repairs. We can bill the property owner, and if the property owner does not pay, the city has the ability to attach a lien to their property. There's a process that's been established for decades on how those things can work if we are forced to go onto private property. When we have to go into a subdivision and mow common areas or take care of common areas, there's no one we can collect from. We can put a lien on that property. What we'll end up doing is owning that property, which was not the intention to start with. But we do want a fair and equitable situation about how we determine who is responsible. We're concerned that the responsibilities are not clearly defined in every case. And that's an ambiguity and an uncertainty that we'd like to address. Who's responsible for what? It's troubling when responsibility varies from plat to plat within the same subdivision. We've looked at some of the subdivisions that you live in, and there may be 5 to 7 different plats with different restrictions on each of those plats. There may be different homeowners associations operating on each of those plats. It creates a hodgepodge that is difficult for you to understand, difficult for us to understand, and difficult for us to establish who's ultimately responsible for these problems. Grass strips, entrance signs, conservation areas. There's a perceived notion that seems to be real common that the city is responsible for common areas. We hear repeatedly, council members heard today, just let the city take care of it. If again, I'm being repetitive, I apologize, but if we continually go on private property and correct maintenance problems, it's going to affect our ability to operate other city departments in an appropriate way. It's also troubling to us that sometimes developers can leave homeowners without information and without any good recourse. And again, if we're going to invite people to live in our community, I believe it's our responsibility as Georgetown City government to make sure that we have one set of rules. They're clearly understood, and then we enforce those rules. We don't have a landscape where we can do that today. We think that needs to be corrected for your all's benefit. We have areas in Georgetown that have never had an HOA and will never need an HOA. I live up on South Broadway in an older part of town. Gosh, homeowners weren't even a dream at the time that those things were built. But there are no common areas, and there's no need for people to put up with a homeowners association. Some older neighborhoods like Indian Hills, there are no common areas whatsoever. So there's no real need for an HOA there. But in many of the more modern subdivisions, our own requirements, the planning and zoning requirements, have certain standards that do create some common areas. And most of our more modern subdivisions do have these areas that need common attention, and we'd like a way to address those. If in any way we have created a concern among people that your city council is trying to cram an HOA ordinance down your throat when it's not your desire to have a homeowners association, that is not the intent of this exercise. The intent of this exercise is to address the current problems and the huge volume of citizen complaints that we're getting about neighborhood maintenance. It's an effort to listen to you and find a great solution. And we think that all of us deserve that common understanding. With that said, I'm not even sure that we need to go into the structure of a possible ordinance. Council are my comments in tune with the way we've approached this issue to date?
Yes.
Yep.
And again, we can make this process much shorter, but we do want to ensure that we've heard from each of you and that you have an opportunity to make your wishes known. With that said, I'm going to start calling people to the podium by the order in which you signed up the sign-up sheet. But I want to make clear that we will hear everyone here tonight. If you wish to speak, we wish to hear from you. And if you haven't signed up on the sheet, once we exhaust this list, we'll be glad to come back to the audience and ask if folks have additional comment. There's a tendency, I think, in public hearings for folks to fire questions. And if we have answers, we want to give you those. But truly, what your council is interested in doing tonight is hearing from you. An ideal scenario for a public hearing is where we would sit in almost silence and listen to you all. So we'll answer questions to the extent that we can, and we'll certainly listen with both ears. So with that bit of introduction, the very first person to sign up is Roger Riddell from White Oak Village.
I really didn't come to speak, but I came to listen.
Well, we're glad to have you, sir.
I signed the roster in there, but I will go later if someone wants to go on me.
We're glad you're
I'm
here.
Vice President of the Homeowner Association out there. We have a very successful homeowner association.
Good.
I can get up and speak now if you want me to.
Yes, sir.
I don't move too quick anymore.
Well, several of us can relate to that.
My name is Roger Riddell. I'm a Vice President of White Oak Village Homeowner Association. I am a realtor, appraiser, builder, and developer, and have been for 51 years. And I feel that the Homeowner Association is very critical in any neighborhood, especially the new neighborhoods that are coming in now. We have a very successful homeowner association at White Oak Village. We have a lot going out there. We have a lot of common area. We maintain that and try to work with the city, the county, the police department, the fire department, the water company, everyone. And we have a real good relationship with those folks. And I don't know whether you realize it or not, the caliber of people you have on these departments. They are top notch. And the police department has been very cooperative out there. Every one of them has been cooperative. And I really want to thank the fire department and the rescue squad. They hauled me out of my house March 28th, and I'm just now beginning to get out again. But we have, and if any of these people are interested in seeing what we do at our association meetings or whatever, I'd be glad to go over it with you. But we have a strong budget. We got control of the financing early in the stage of that development about 8 or 9 years ago. And we got control of the money. We have worked with the developers and the builders, which is John Shirley and Mike G. Been a real excellent relationship. They have cooperated with us. They've turned all the funds and maintenance and everything over to us. And we've got about 10 more acres that's going to be developed there. Mike is getting ready to start on it soon. The plat was just approved a few weeks ago. And anybody that has any questions about it, I'll be glad to answer them for you, but we like it out there, and it's nice. And we're a little different than most people. We're a 55 and over community, and we're a condo project. So the people don't own anything outside other than 1/95th interest in the common area. They own the inside of their condos. We take care of the maintenance, lawn mowing, snow removal, everything, and try to keep the retention pond mowed if it doesn't rain too much. And right now we're undergoing a $600,000 roof replacement from the hailstorm we had. I'll sit down and shut up, but I didn't know I was going to be speaking tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Riddell.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things that we have envisioned, at some point, we hope to get to take examples from well-functioning homeowners association and actually see if we can create a toolkit that might include sample bylaws from HOAs that have worked well, best practices that they might have adopted, and us put that into a toolkit that would be available for use by all of our citizens. Next on the list, Scott Lanter.
Good evening, everyone. Don't really have an expectation for answers to these questions, but I would like to see them in the future. You noted at the beginning that you were responding to existing problems. A couple of notes I wrote down is where and what. I've heard the colony. I'd like to see that expanded on if there's other areas. Number of complaints, how many and over what time period. I'd also like to know what statutory authority is going to be used for the city government to pass an HOA. What vehicle will get that process from your all's council to an actual working ordinance? I'd like to know what that is. Probably my biggest question is what about defunct HOAs? If the developers are initially responsible for forming HOA and it doesn't happen, that's a breakdown of government. It's not my problem. I bought my house with a deed restriction that said no HOA. Now, I guess my question for the council, I guess the mayor, are you telling me the colony had an HOA association?
Yes, they did.
Okay. That's not my responsibility after buying the property and being told by the homeowner and that passing through the purchase process, there was no HOA. I bought a house thinking there was no HOA. It's not my responsibility. It's a breakdown of government oversight. I'm not saying it's your problem, but it's happened in the past that needs to be resolved, but not this way. You know, I noted when you were talking out about street lights and everything that it lays a set of ground rules, and it's for whatever area it was. They changed out their street lights. That was a private agreement between a homeowner and the HOA. I think by passing this ordinance, you're inserting city government into a private agreement. You said it yourself. And quite frankly, it's okay for you to say no. When someone calls and says they want something fixed, if it doesn't involve public safety, say no. The budget won't allow for it. Simply say no. And the last thing I'll leave you with, if you as my mayor are not being fiscally responsible, that's what elections are for. And I'll simply leave it at that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last comment.
If you or anybody else on the city council are not being fiscally responsible with my tax money, that's what elections are for. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next on the list is Terry
Cowan.
Cowan. Thank you, ma'am.
Your Honor and council members, I am Terry Cowan, a homeowner within the Pavilion Courtyards HOA, which is a city-approved developed active senior establishment of 27 potential properties. As a transplant, it was not known to me that I was buying into a private neighborhood. The covenant and bylaws were not available to us until sometime after we purchased our home. The official formalization of the HOA came about a year after acquiring our home, when dues were mandated without rationale or input. While necessary to do so, it appears the city presently sees the need to push back responsibilities to its neighborhoods. I personally believe that some of these are actually the developer's responsibility, not necessarily the HOA's. My personal experience is when seeking guidance and information regarding where responsibility lies, the city attorney informed me that our covenant bylaws weren't worth the paper typed on. When investigating within the city's initial approval, Mr. Byers, our developer, has shirked responsibility, altered his game plan, and therefore changed the dynamics of what I believe to be buying into. Our HOA has spent thousands in legal fees unnecessarily to simply determine accountability and responsibility. For instance, though our bylaws are specific that homes are only single-family dwellings and the conducting of business within the neighborhood is strictly prohibited, the developer proceeded to lease multiple homes to companies serving multiple brain-injured residents, as well as offering daycare services. These homes are a 24/7 business with numerous employees coming and going, which ultimately has changed the entire dynamic of our quaint neighborhood. We paid high dollar to actually live within. Property values plummeted, homes don't sell, some working at the business are a nuisance, speed through our narrow streets, are disrespectful, and have no regard for following both the rules and safety. It's an atrocity that all the energy we have expended in combating this ongoing issue. The only ones that have actually benefited from the intrusion partnership is our developer and Ms. Connie Tackett. In the initial approval process, the city was specific as to what was required of our developer in bringing the neighborhood to fruition. Distance, number of trees, dividing neighborhoods, fencing, frontage, grading, lagoon, and so forth. However, the city has not held accountable or forced the developer to actually follow or maintain some of these mandates, and the HOA has absolutely no recourse to force him to uphold them. Our streets only have the initial foundational grade and have deteriorated significantly. The developer refuses to remedy, and after more than 10 years has lapsed, refuses to apply the final asphalt layer until he's completely finished with the development. That could be another 10 years. Unfortunately, the HOA has no grounds to force him to fulfill these responsibilities. And while repairing and laying the asphalt could potentially cost my neighbors and I upwards of $200,000, the city has not done its part to protect us, law-abiding, tax-paying citizens. The $15,000 bond initially required to hold a developer somewhat accountable is a joke and expired years ago. Neighborhoods, essentially HOAs by default, have no recourse and therefore are saddled with both the risk and responsibility of negligent developers. The roadside on Champion Way, adjacent to our neighborhood, is city property. Yet as good citizens, we take pride and covered the weekly costs to maintain that corridor. In contrast, while we're considered private, we receive weekly trash pickup service, however, seldom ever receive snow removal or salting. Year after year, we have been forced to spend thousands hiring expensive snow removal services in order to provide minimal safety to our neighbors. In conclusion, knowing then what I know now about the liability and risk associated with Scott County's HOAs, I would never purchase a home in such a community and never will again. My observation is that the city has not demonstrated adequate due diligence, regard, or governance protecting the vulnerability of its residents against negligent developers. There needs to be thorough accountability, recourse, and enforced fines. That's when you will find HOAs willing to take on added responsibility, ultimately lessening the city's burden. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate each of the comments we're receiving. Given the size of the audience, as a courtesy to your neighbors, if we could keep our comments to somewhere to the 4 to 5 minute range, we can get out of here at a reasonable time tonight. Next on your agenda is David and Brenda Denman. Sorry, thank you.
Your last comment was something that a homeowners association would actually endorse. Keep your comments short. I like that. That's funny. The area that I live in, we would benefit greatly from a homeowners association. We have one little condition that would be eliminated because of a homeowners association. However, I'm not in favor of them. I don't like them. I see them as nothing more than another administration, one that's less elected, less responsible to the community. If we were to go that route, we might as well dissolve Georgetown and just have little associations taking care of themselves. We wouldn't need anything else. It's not practical. That's not responsible. It's not the way we would be going. I'm just not in favor of the associations. We don't live in one. If we wanted to live in one, we would have purchased a home that was in such an area or advocated for our neighborhood to do that themselves. We haven't. So, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Is Sandra Thompson?
Mr. Mayor, I own a house in Canewood. I just want to say that I've been through that process that we've been through the last 5 years, and the current homeowners association is doing a marvelous job. I'm a realtor from another state. I'm not practicing in Kentucky, and Kentucky is what they call a buyer beware state, and so y'all have to really, if you're going to buy a house, you have to do a lot of research on your own. There's a lot of stuff that, people already mentioned that they didn't get the information they needed. You have to find it for yourself. It's not always given to you. I didn't get my HOA. In Virginia, you have to have it within 3 days or you can rescind your contract. And that's not written in law here. But I do want to say that the HOA in Canewood does a great job. And so I'm very thankful that they finally have control of the HOA and that you would do your best to, at the very least, give people the information that they need. Have records where somebody who is looking to purchase a house might be able to come and see what those covenants are for that property, and that would be easily found by them. That would help them a lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is Trace Bennett?
Mr. Mayor, there's 3 of us here together.
Yes, ma'am.
Tag team.
Tag team.
Trace, way to go.
You're number 3.
On the fire station, on Moore's Mill, across from
That way you can skip calling a couple of names down the welcome. We are the Board of Directors of Canewood Association, and thank you very much for the kind comments. We want to thank the City Council for this forum. We agree that there is a certain responsibility that goes with homeowners associations, and I think the council, by passing the resolution they just passed in March about the storm sewers and drainage systems, agrees that homeowners associations should take responsibility. What we'd like to bring just to the forefront, and we'll be brief, is we do have a question as to how, through planning and zoning, Unit 5 in Canewood Reserve, with the same 14 lots, can have 3 separate restrictions, covenants, and conditions, with 3 different levels of participation in the homeowners association. I don't know if this has been addressed with City Council. It appears that developers, you talk a lot about holding homeowners responsible. I do agree with the lady that said developers truly need to be held responsible. Because we have, you can build a house, and if the next door neighbor house is a vacant lot, these developers can put restrictions and covenants that are completely in opposition to anything. And we've got documents, piles of documents. We've been in litigation for 2 years on how this happens. So if you guys want to interact or discuss how you allow developers to circumvent and undermine the responsibility of the HOAs, we would really appreciate that. I'll step away and let somebody else. Yep, sweet. That's it. That's it. What? Yeah.
That was a threefer.
Yeah.
The council has discussed at some length, we haven't reached conclusions yet, but the council has expressed concern about when we see a neighborhood and the character of that neighborhood changing in midstream. And we think that's a real troubling development. We think, again, if we're going to be one of the fastest growing cities in the state, that when people move into the community, they ought to have enough confidence that the neighborhood in which they choose to make their investment doesn't change on them overnight. And that is of grave concern to us. We saw this occur some 20 years ago in a disastrous situation in one of our neighborhoods. We're aware of the activities in Canewood. At least one of our council members has brought forth an ordinance to address some of those concerns. And we are still deliberating on what the best course of action is. But the specific circumstances that you've mentioned, I think, are a concern to each of your city council members.
Are these planning and zoning responsibilities? Because what is concerning to us is none of these documents are notarized or signed by anyone in city government, which leads us to believe that the developers can ad hoc do anything they want with no oversight.
Does it follow with the state? That paperwork would be, have no legal leg to stand on with no city.
And we're in a neighborhood that these three different filings all cite the Canewood HOA with three different options. This one, you can choose to be in the homeowners association. This one, you can be in the homeowners association, but you don't have to pay the golf dues. This one is a minimum of the homeowners association for 2 years, and then you can opt out. And as you all know, we've got the largest common area in the city. We have a golf course, which is common area. So I
Actually tell him that.
what?
Tom,
Come
my
on.
name's David Johnson.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm president of the HOA at Canewood. The whole problem with our Canewood subdivision, I'm going to be short and sweet. We annexed that property in, okay? Canewood Reserve was annexed in as to be part of Canewood. Should have the same restrictions, should have the same covenants and bylaws, okay? However, there's these three areas that have 9 lots that are different. They have different covenants and restrictions among those 9 different lots. However, the other 32 lots have the same ones. So literally, somebody's backing up to this house, and they're going to build a house on this lot and have no restrictions whatsoever, okay? But yet, we annexed all that property in to have that, okay? And the developer changed that as he went along. And if you read some of these things, he starts out telling you you're part of the Canewood HOA, and then shortly down through this wording, he starts saying, oh, we are not. You can be opted out if you want to. Oh, by the way, if you opt out, you're going to be in Payne's Landing. However, Payne's Landing crosses over into the reserve. It's so confusing for the poor ladies down at the clerk's office when you go in and ask for, I want Canewood Reserve lot number this. They go, oh my Lord. You mean Payne's Landing? You know, it's called Payne's Landing, Canewood Reserve. I think council needs to review and look at developers that say, choose the area. Is it Canewood Reserve? Is it Payne's Landing? If there's a dividing between the two and there's 2 different HOAs, then they need to say, this property belongs to Canewood Reserve, this property belongs to Payne's Landing.
What's unfortunate is that we have homeowners that are purchasing homes. They are led to believe that they are in Canewood. They come up to try to use the pool facilities, the golf. We get emails, we get phone calls, why am I not allowed? And they're not members of our homeowners association, much to their dismay, because of these things that are happening right here, where they're just carving out little homes. We have several lots right now that are ready to be platted. And our fear is that what we're speaking about right now, they're not gonna be platted the same as all of the other homes within our neighborhood. Some of these are right across the street from us.
Well, some of these plats that are going to plat now are in the old part of Canewood.
Right.
They're not in Inverness
Right.
or the Reserve or Payne's Landing. They're in the original land of Canewood homeowners.
But they're unplatted because they didn't want to pay taxes on them. So what will city council do to ensure that they are platted consistently with everybody else in the neighborhood? And that's why I think that city ordinance you spoke about is well needed.
Yes, ma'am. And I don't have specific answers for each of your questions, but I do think that you have perfectly highlighted the need for the type of ordinance that we're trying to craft. We've got to solve these issues where there are opportunities for multiple homeowners associations with different levels of responsibilities. As I understand in Canewood, you can pay $0, you can pay $250, or you can pay $1,400 a year.
Not anymore.
Well, that's not
anymore.
correct.
That's not.
Not today.
It
Not
was.
today.
And I wanna put the invitation out to any council person, if you would like to sit down with us, go over details about what we're talking about, so that you can see exactly how we've got to this point. With some of these, we're more than happy to set up that time and sit down and talk to you. We know it's a little bit too
Yeah,
much
we won't take
right
up your
now.
time tonight, but we do have mountains of documents.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
I think you've hit on some really.
Thanks. Mr. Mayor, did you invite planning and zoning to be here tonight? They're outside, okay. I was gonna say there's a crowd here, so I didn't know if they were here. It seems like that's kind of
Well, if
bringing
That would be a
over
question
and
they
over.
could ask them.
some folks have left.
Oh, here we go.
There.
Okay. There's no room in the
We've created room for you.
front and center.
There's still room in here now. Well,
It's been, let's see, is Zane Walker or?
James.
That's me, and then you're, yeah.
Cindy.
They all went together.
So,
They do everything as a group.
Missy.
Ms. Mitchell.
Our numbers, right. I am Missy Winchell, and I'm a realtor here in Scott County, and I have worked with developers, builders, homeowners, and I have to admit, initially, when I went to the realtor breakfast the other day, and this was brought up, I got a lot of phone calls from builders and other realtors and homeowners that think that city government is overstepping. So I'm glad I came to this meeting, and I would very much like to be involved in what goes on from here forward. But I have to say, I live in Canewood too, and I used to sell for a builder that built in Canewood, and it was nearly impossible to sell a home there for several years because of all the uncertainty. But now our HOA is running beautifully, very, very well, I have to say. I purchased a home there because of that. I would never have done that before. I couldn't encourage a client to do that either. And as a realtor, I do believe that it's my responsibility to educate my clients on where they're moving to, what their fees are gonna be, who owns what part of the property, who's responsible for what. But I can also tell you as a realtor, it's nearly impossible to get that information in some places. Canewood being one of the places. There's so much mixed information out there, and it's nearly impossible for us to do it. And as a realtor, I can tell you the Board of Realtors tells us we're not attorneys. Don't give out all that information because you're saying this is what's in place and this is what's going to happen. That can change, and we can't be legally responsible for that. So I think it's imperative that the city do something with these HOAs.
Thank you.
You're on, David.
David Johnson.
Oh, he was up.
Oh, you, thank you. All right. Sorry, David. Bob Mower?
Evening, my name is Bob Moeller. I live in Cherry Blossom, and I'm on the board of directors for the Homeowners Association. Half our board sitting in the back row there. But we fully support an ordinance. Our Homeowners Association runs like a clock. It does good. We enforce stuff. Our common areas are beautiful. But one thing that we read in the newspaper gives us some concern about the proposed ordinance.
Yes, sir.
And that was the stormwater. You guys own the streets. You have the zoning authority and the approval authority for the developer inspecting what the developers put in for storm drains. I think it's totally unfair for you guys to all of a sudden burden the homeowners association with any repairs and stuff, because it's your water, it's coming off your street. You know, it's not ours. And the storm discharge is right in my backyard from my street, and it's fine. But we don't want to have unexplained costs that we don't have to have. So, don't do that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, brother.
He said it, maintain.
Mary Beth Summers.
Good evening. I live in Stonebrook, which is Lanes Run. We're just a one-street development. And I have to say, before I came, I was not at all in favor of an ordinance that would define the HOAs, but I think I've changed my mind.
Good.
But here's what I want to see. I want to see an ordinance that favors the homeowners, not the developers, not the builders, because all I see in my development and in Pleasant Valley, when I call the city, when I call code enforcement, whoever, they're very responsive, but the builders and the developers know the game better than anybody else. And they play it every single day, and it's to our detriment. They don't mow their properties that don't have houses on them. They sometimes clean up their messes, most times they don't. This is the problem. The common thread here is not the homeowners or what they will do as their responsibility for their neighbors and their neighborhood. It's the developers and the builders. And until the city reins them in, this will never be solved. You all have to take responsibility and represent the people who are paying the taxes. And that's all I have to say.
Next on our list is Linda and Carl Hess.
Good to be outside.
They were sitting on the back row, and I saw them step out, so I don't know if they're out in the hallway or if they've gone.
Okay, if they come back in, we'll
Okay.
reinsert them.
They actually live in the neighborhood I live in, so I will recognize them.
Yeah, they are from Rocky Creek. Bernice Napier?
I was just here to listen. I've just lived in Georgetown for a little over a year, and I'm in Omni. I live in Payne's Crossing, and Omni's our HOA, and I just here to kind of see what's going on.
We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Billy Mussman. All right, thank you. Miss Rose? Or, you've been spoken for.
Oh, okay.
President and accounting for, thank you. I assume that would also apply for Vicki Rose. Good, okay. Loretta Reddington? They left, thank you. Is there a Paula Yost?
Yes.
Hi.
I originally just thought was signing down for attendance, but I was just wanting to clarify for the gentleman that was speaking about the colony. I built my first house there in 1981 and the second house in 1998. I was originally told about a homeowners in 91 and said that it was going to come into place sometime down the road. Built my house in 98, never heard anything else about it. Now I've jumped into Canewood, so kind of went from one frying pan to the other. But with the colony, we were never an HOA. It was never turned over from Mr. Patton. We tried. I was actually not even a realtor at the time, but I was actually one of the residents that tried to get it started, and nobody would have anything to do with it. So it was never in place. So that's all I had to say.
That's good information.
Thank you.
Tom Reddington.
He left.
He left. Thank you. Eric and Rebecca Denny. They've been standing patiently.
I'm Rebecca Denby. That's my husband, Eric. I do agree with what you're saying, that there needs to be some sort of ordinance. Just to be clear, though, it's not, is it, for people who don't already have one, it's a non-issue for them, is that correct? Or are you saying every neighborhood needs to have one? I just want to be clear.
Not every neighborhood needs one.
This is,
Right.
this is about coming back
Ones
to
that already are supposed to have one.
supposed to is the key, and it's
Right.
It's,
Right.
We live in the landing at Pleasant Valley, which is a Vault Homes development, separate from the Pleasant Valley, the Stony Brook, and the Pleasant Valley in the back. I do agree that we need some sort of accountability for the HOAs. Every HOA needs to have a president, needs to have a group. And that group needs to be accountable to the city in some way. In the same regard, though, the city and the Department of Planning and Zoning have to have some sort of accountability as well. As far as the planning, land platting, lot partitioning, easements, everything needs to be clear, laid out, and unchangeable once they have submitted it and asked for approval. Unless you find something wrong with it, or the Department of Planning and Zoning, they can't come back and say, well, this lot, oh gosh, we think we'll give it a different HOA. No, there has to be accountability, continuity, things that are just a standard. Again, I don't think the infrastructure should be the responsibility. Roads, drainage, even street signs, don't they belong to the city? But as far as mowing, beautification, upkeep of that sort, maintenance, yes, the homeowners association should be responsible for those. And someone needs to be responsible for making sure that there is an HOA in place. Like the developer, before they turn it over to an HOA, has to maybe submit a sheet of the people who are going to be the HOA to the city. Yeah, there has to be, huh? You can say what you want to say when you say. That's right. So, yes, basically what I'm saying is everybody needs accountability.
Yes, ma'am.
The builders can't change things. The planning and zoning needs to make sure that the runoff of the drainage is not going into somebody's yard before they approve it. Planning and zoning needs a great deal of accountability. A large amount of accountability, really. And for that, yes, everybody is responsible. It needs to go into an ordinance. There needs to be something in solid.
Great, thank you. Yes, sir.
You want to say? Really? He's all that hurry up.
That's good. He didn't want to go faster.
Hey, Mayor, just for clarification, because it's been mentioned a couple of times, I want to make sure the audience understands this. The council did already pass a storm drainage, stormwater, that your homeowners association, and you are responsible for that.
Future development.
Going
Future development.
Future
Future,
development.
Here
not for
forward.
any of these people.
Yeah, future development.
It does not apply to your current development.
No, it's
No.
not
It does
any-
not, but during the conversation of when it took place in the council chambers, the conversation was in the future because of phase, just so you know, in the future of how phase of the stormwater that it may become your responsibility in the future. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we gather on it.
Again, we get back to the Department of Planning and Zoning and how accountable, I mean, you may have to revisit that ordinance that you passed because your Department of Planning and Zoning has a great deal of accountability on where that water's going.
Very good.
And do the homeowners associations have the resources to correct anything?
Probably not.
I mean, are we gonna park a bulldozer out in the common area so we have equipment we need? Did the homeowners association purchase bobcats and we'll just park them right there and maybe entrance way by the broken wall?
Sir, if you'd like to make a comment, please come back to the podium and make your comment.
That's the big thing. How can you expect us to know how to fix a storm drain that's clogged up underground?
That was the conversation Monday night.
So, I mean, we need,
I'd like to address that.
you'd have to have a backhoe, you'd have to, I mean, how would we have the resource? Are you just saying we should pay for it?
Yes. The idea of our new stormwater ordinance is, and we're about to unveil our new stormwater BMP manual. BMP is a fancy term for all the different type of stormwater things you see. Drainage ponds, for swales, any kind of stormwater feature you see. And we're getting ready to come out for all interested parties a manual that will basically say, here, it's like stereo instructions. Here is how you take care of this BMP, and it will say annually, here's what you do. Here's an estimated cost of how you do it. Here's the exact procedure you would follow to do it.
So
What we say going forward is these stormwater features are private features.
then we should have input on how the storm system is set up before it's ever set up. If the city says, builder, this is how you design the system, this is how you implement this system, and the system fails, then
Tonight's a public hearing.
You're
We want
right.
to hear from you, but we really don't want to debate you tonight.
Right.
We understand your concerns, and the stormwater ordinance has been passed
It's
at
already
this
passed.
point. It only affects future developments. It doesn't affect any of your homes that are in the audience tonight. We did not choose out of the blue to pick up a stormwater ordinance. We are under severe pressure from the Environmental Protection Agency, as is every other city in Kentucky, to address these issues. But we really appreciate your comments, and we've taken notes on your questions and concerns. But I'm not prepared to debate you on these issues tonight.
Understand, yes, and it's not the place for that, you're right.
But thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
We have a Frank Carter who has signed up to speak, even though you're in Victoria Estates.
Yes, sir.
You are aware you're not in the city of Georgetown.
That is correct. However, I do have a mother-in-law that is in the 55 and over, so I'm kind of
we welcome your comments.
coming in the side door, Mayor Prevost. The first thing that's come up is HOAs are very complicated. There's lawyers involved, and there's lay people involved. And the city council is in between that. I'm here to offer information, and that is this. There is a National Homeowners Association entity. It is called Community Association Institute, CAI.org. Now, several of the people I've heard speak tonight, very emotional and very forthright. I have been serving on the Victoria Estates Board off and on for 10 years. I'm sorry, 8. I lose count. What I would say to you is there is a wealth of information in this organization. I'm not here to plug them. All I can tell you is through this organization, I have been able to assist in setting up what I consider a successful HOA at Victoria Estates. I think Canewood may have also had some stuff in this. The next thing I would say is I more than strongly urge, if there is such a word, that the Association of Realtors, if anyone gets a listing in an HOA, they need to be educated too. Because I would hasten to add, if I checked 20 MLS listings that HOAs are there is an error in those listings, whether it's the dues, when they're due, or whatever else. So there is a great amount of education on all sides that can happen. Now, whenever you get attorneys involved, I don't think anybody will argue, nobody leaves the room happy. Okay? That is the problem. And Andrew, no direct inputs, okay? Your job is tough enough.
No offense taken.
Okay.
It's him too.
Now, Mayor Prather, the one thing that I received a copy of the ordinance, and in here it is said, Section 715B, Georgetown, and then it says Scott County subdivisions. Is there any possibility that whatever you pass here is going right back up to the judge exec for approval? No, I'm just saying to you.
I can't speak for the fiscal.
I know, but as soon as I see in here Georgetown / Scott County, and I know you've been on the other side of that fence.
Yes, sir.
You know, I think it needs, because until I saw this, I knew about the drainage water. I try and keep up to date on homeowner association events in Scott County. And I will say, we've got a problem. And most of it is two words: education, communication. City website, I know you're not Lexington. Take a look at their website, how they do it. They've got a directory. I know they're structured a little bit differently. Technology can help you out here. Lastly, CAI has a legislative group. They are over at Frankfurt. They have already passed the Condominium Act, or policy. They are working on an HOA. And this is one of the things that's curious. Up where this gentleman lives, at the 55 and over, that's a condominium, looks just like a HOA. Got green grass and everything else. It's not a 20-story high-rise condominium. But you're just addressing HOAs. But I'll submit to you, do you know if there's any condominiums in Georgetown? I don't know. But they qualify for it. So I'm saying your HOA, I don't think, would apply to White Oak. So I just urge you, I know the realtors are not happy with the timing. Any rush decision will be challenged in court later. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I make a comment?
Yes, sir.
I think there might be some misunderstanding. I believe there's a copy of an ordinance that I presented Monday night floating around.
You need to.
Okay.
Continue.
I believe there's a copy of an ordinance that I presented Monday night floating around the crowd, and that's what you referred to.
Yes.
Okay. That's not the ordinance we're having this meeting about.
I know.
Okay. I just want to make that
All I'm
clear.
referring to, if you put an ordinance out there and you put Georgetown / Scott County, the other side, and if you think you don't know how many HOAs are in the city, you want to take a guess about the county?
Right.
And all I can tell you is, by a show of hands, if I say the word CC&R, do you know what I'm talking about? How many hands know what that is? That's what governs an HOA. That's what should be given to every buyer of a piece of property in an HOA. It is a contract.
Repeat what that is.
CC&R is an abbreviation for
Covenants, conditions, and restrictions.
covenants, conditions, and restrictions. And that's how the HOA functions.
And just to clarify,
Sure.
I think it's great, the opportunity to get more information.
Absolutely, be glad to.
The website is actually caionline.org.
Yes, there's,
We
yes.
were trying to punch it up, but it's,
caionline.org.
and I'm glad that you repeated it a second time because my first note was CIA.org. I didn't want to
So-
do that.
CIA on
So,
Monday night.
Mayor Prather, you transpose letters as well as numbers.
Occasionally.
Should we be concerned about the budget?
Probably should, but just keep an eye on me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yes, sir. David Young?
Mayor Prather, council members, I am one of the gentlemen that lives in the reserve at Canewood. And when we moved in several years ago, we were told this is the reserve. It's the last division, no houses under 3,000 square feet in this area. The Elkwood Creek is behind my house. I've contacted code enforcement so many times. The code officer, Dusty, and I are on a first name basis. On dealing with the prior developer before he passed on keeping things mowed. It's gotten so high that I've sit on my front porch and watched coyotes run in front of my house across the street. You couldn't see fire hydrants. Talking about drain water, which I just found out about sitting here. There's two large areas behind my house on my property, between my house and the creek, that large stone things that and evidently have to do with drain water. I've been trying for 3 years to get where the developer dumped his development log of trees. It's about the size of this room. And all the properties I've lived in, I've never known a city to allow a developer to leave his trash. I'm not enamored with our homeowners association, although when I moved in, I was told I didn't have one. Since I don't play golf, obviously, I don't even have a choice on whether I do or not. I still have to pay the dues. And the purpose of our golf course was, to keep our property values up. Now we've got a developer that's come in and our property values are not going to be going up, which all of us in that area are really not happy. Your home is your largest investment you make in your entire life. Yep. If your 401k's tanking or your stock market's tanking, you're going to sell and get out. I mean, my neighbors they're fleeing like, half my neighborhood I don't know anymore. You want to raise your kids in a place where it's stable and everybody knows your neighbor, and it's kind of hard to do when they're all leaving every 6 months because of the property value and what's going on. We're just asking for some help. I'm dealing with Ball Homes now with Dusty keeping across the way mowed. And I don't call if it's 10 inches. I'm calling when it's waist high. I give them some slack, but they have 10 business days to respond after they get the letter, and it's usually a month time frame. And so it's mowed maybe 3 or 4 times a year. And I went and got a copy of it last year to see if there were any liens. None in the last 2 years against the developers. No fines, no nothing. It's amazed me. I mean, I lived in a homeowner association where I was the president. You had 3 strikes in 6 months. If you had 3 verifiable complaints, it was an automatic $1,000 fine. Automatic. That stops after the first fine. If it doesn't, that's more money for your budget. So just a suggestion. I thank you for your time. And like I said, all we're asking for is some help. I mean, we've got, our dues are going to continue to go up because the homes we were that we were hoping to be built in our neighborhood there in the reserve are now going to have no dues because they're not part of our homeowners. I've never seen you go into a neighborhood and, well, this house is, but that house isn't. This one is over here, but that one's not. And this one can have a fence, but that one can't. The pool's over here, but not over here. It makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
Makes no sense. So, again, just asking for some help. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. Is Catherine Catherine Franks.
I didn't know we were supposed to talk. I'm in Reading Lake Subdivision, Reading Lake Homeowners Association. I'm the secretary. The president and the treasurer were unable to come. We try to have a ongoing homeowners association, but we are struggling due to several issues, some of which people have touched on here, and I think everyone has spoken so well. I feel silly, but one of the problems we have is we do have a little lake, and it is probably the part of the stormwater issue. And we've had problems over the last few years because we're getting in a lot more stormwater drainage because of Bradford Place and the other subdivisions is what we've been told. And as a result, we've had to replace the pumps, and when we've had issues that the pumps continue to break down, and as a result, we get the algae forms, and then the homeowners don't like that because that reduces their property values. Or we get a temperature inversion and all the fish die, and that's not fun for anyone in the neighborhood either. Our only recourse for any of the issues was to raise the homeowners association dues. Our problem is that if people don't pay it, we're kind of strapped. They have come. The president and the treasurer have come to the city to try to figure out how do we put a lien in, and we're not finding any issue. They gave us some examples of some that have been filled out, but it looks like you have to hire an attorney, which then that's more money. And so we have gone online trying to find out how to file a lien about these issues for people who haven't paid. The other thing is, and if they do anything else that's not in the CCNR or whatever, there's nothing we can do about it. You know, if they decide that instead of putting the 42-inch fence that backs up to the lake, they want to go with a 6-foot privacy fence, there's no way we can, there's no recourse that we can do anything to stop them from doing that. There's no fines, there's no action that we can take as a homeowners association. And so, for those reasons, I think that the ordinance would be a good thing, and also, I feel like I have a lot at stake here because I live on Reading Lake and I have property in Payne's Landing and the Colony, and I also have a townhouse. So, you know, I would like to get all this covered, and thank you so much for picking up those stones in front of the Colony. I appreciate it. So, with that,
she made a comment that she had didn't know what to do as far as how she could take care of the problem. I believe Canewood can answer that question the way their HOA's run.
Actually, Canewood does assess only, and we have two.
Mhm.
Yeah, she said she did 35 just last week.
So you might want to talk to
you and find out how you do that. I was going to try to get a hold of an attorney friend and see if we could get it, and then just I know we can tack those fees on. Okay, well, great.
So you can talk
I
to
need
these
your
ladies
name.
here, and they can help you out.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
There you go.
Casey Kinnos? Should I? Thank you. Sarah Vandover?
Got tired of listening.
Then Darren Vanover may not be here. All right, thank you. Jenny Wash?
I think we must answer a lot of questions. Uh-oh. Jenny?
Hi there.
Hi.
Are you Miss Wash?
I am.
Great. Your turn.
I live in Rocky Creek.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just planned on coming talking, and I just learned about the issues with the storm drain tonight also, and I know that's not what this is supposed to be about, and I'd be glad to send emails, but I worked with the planning and zoning guy a few years ago after I bought my house because I had water developing, as do most of the neighbors, on both sides of our house, and I have the storm drain in the back of my house. And they told me that when the subdivision was built, there was actually supposed to be a common area between the houses where the storm drain is, and it wasn't done. So if at some point that could potentially become my responsibility, then Ball Homes needs to come back and fix that. Because, I mean, you know, that could be a lot of money. And like I said, the storm drain isn't right in my backyard. I mean, they put a fence so that my son would not, or my animals would not fall into it. So, wow, that's all.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you waiting and being with us. Pam Evans. That's right, isn't it? Thank you. Megan Maynard. Hi.
I am the president of Richfield Farms HOA. I'm the secretary. I'm everything. Nobody wants to help me.
Sorry.
There's a place in heaven for you.
Yeah. And I also have 2 kids, and I work 40 hours a week in Frankfurt. So it's $50 a year, and it's just to mow our green spaces, which is almost 6 acres. I deal with our restrictions daily. Nobody wants to follow them. Our developer, they don't pertain to the homes in our subdivision. They were like brought in, and they don't even go with the homes. So it's like there's sections, 3 sections, and there's 208 homes in our subdivision. I deal with motorcycles in our green spaces. I just called the police the other day about little boys riding their, not street bikes, dirt bikes on our green spaces. A homeowner told me he would put nails in my, he wasn't a homeowner, he's a renter. He'd put nails in my tires if I did get out in front of his house. And the police came. He was very helpful. He told the renter that you can't ride on the green spaces, but there's nothing we can do. I mean, we can't file a lien for them getting on the green space. We can't do anything with them. The homes that are not being mowed, there's a home on Richfield, just the main drag. They never mow, ever. Dusty, I talk to him all the time. We're on first name basis too. He goes over there probably weekly, and it's the 10 days. We'll blah 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 blah. It looks horrible. There's fences that we wasn't supposed to have stockade fences. Do y'all know what stockade fences are?
Yeah.
They're the fences sold at Lowe's. What's in our subdivision? Stockade fence. It's everywhere. I have a stockade fence, but that's the way our restrictions was wrote like that, but that's what everybody has, but we can't enforce anything because we just can't. So I think an ordinance would be good to be able to enforce something in our subdivision, because these homeowners and renters, our subdivision is mostly renters. I filed 35 liens on homes, not paying $50 a year just to mow. Now those liens have tripled. They owe $300, $400 because of the years that they haven't paid. I wait 2 years and then I'll file a lien, $100. So it costs $13 to put it on, $13 to take it off, and I don't have an attorney to do it. I do it all myself, and I need help. So anything that you can do to help would be grateful in some kind of ordinance, because it's a mess. And if I get my tires popped because I've told someone to stay off our green spaces, yeah, but I need help. So anything you can do to help us. Boats in driveways. That's in our restrictions. You can't have a boat in a driveway. It needs to be in a garage or on a storage shed. Get your boat off of your driveway. What are you going to do, lady? Well, actually, I can't do anything. I can tell you need to move it, but I can't enforce you to move it because it's in our restriction. We can't do that. Our sidewalks wasn't even complete in our drains, and the city released the bonds to the developer, and we had to finish those. And Richfield's a mess because I'm the only one doing it. I have no help. Nobody wants to take it on. To change our restrictions, we have to have 90% of the homeowners vote to change it. Our subdivision is mostly renters. And to get in touch with the homeowner, can't. They don't write back. I have no phone numbers, nothing. So any help would be greatly appreciated.
John Stein? John John Strim. Ricky Stone.
Your Honor, I'm just here to observe. I live out in Rocky Creek Farm. I just wanted to maybe get a glimpse to see who's all with Omni. Are you having issues?
Yes, yes. Oh, yeah.
And so,
I'm feeling it. Yeah.
He's up.
Robert sits too.
I'm Ricky Stone. I live out in Rocky Creek Farm. I've lived there now for 3 years. I wasn't too keen on moving to Georgetown. I'll just be honest with you. I've come from Louisville, work at Toyota. I owned a home in Louisville. I wasn't part of a homeowners association, so I'm new to this game. The one thing I noticed was, okay, well, given the area that I live in, I'm just like, okay, what are my homeowners' fees going towards? If it's, I understand maintenance, which is great, but my common area, I guess, within our neighborhood is not that much. So where's that money going? And then, of course, the front of the subdivision isn't built up yet. And they're now finally starting to do some things. And even with that, the builders are, leaving trash and everything else out in, the streets where we can't get around. And then, of course, there's grass growing. And had a couple. It wasn't until I got on Facebook and talked to some other folks to finally realize that, I wasn't the only one asking the same questions. What's going on? So with this ordinance that you guys are proposing, I just want to see some consistency. That's all I want. I mean, you got Dominion Homes, you got Ball Home, and now you got Simtex. Look, I'm new to all this up here, so I'm like, who the hell's Simtex? Okay, so now they brought up Dominion. I didn't get a letter from Dominion like, hey, Mr. Stone, things are kind of moving on to, in this direction. Because, I don't know. I just need to see, again, I guess some better transparency as to what my money is going towards, because it's quite a bit out there at Rocky Creek. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you mow the lawn and everything, but I got lights right there in the front of my subdivision. Thank you. And they're not lit.
Okay. We have about 150 properties. I think we pay $300 a piece.
Yeah.
Annually? Huh?
Annually. And and we don't have a clubhouse or a pool. Yeah. But yeah, so again, I just happened to be working day shift this week, so I definitely wanted to take time to at least hear what everybody else was, because again, I don't know the ins and outs of homeowners association. So I'm hearing, of course, there's some issues throughout Georgetown, but yeah, whatever can be done. I just want some transparency. It's like, okay, from A to Z, whether it's the rent or the homeowners, the builders, developers. It's like, look, you need to be doing this. Homeowners need to be doing that. If you step outside of that, you're getting hit with a fine. It's as simple as that. That's all I had. Thank you.
Very good.
Good.
We have exhausted the list of folks who had signed up for comment. Are there others that have not spoken yet that would like to? Well, let's keep ourselves, the gentleman who's standing up, well, since he's
We
up.
got two over here next to the podium also.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, we'll get to
We're
you.
the same neighborhood.
all the same
So we probably have many of the same concerns. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. We're gonna get to the bottom of this.
I like this guy.
Your name?
Mayor, council members, my name is Jeff Atwood. Okay, I'm a lifelong resident of here, Georgetown. I'm in a legal situation. I have a tree in my backyard that is a danger to my family. I want to cut it down. My homeowners association says I can't. If that tree comes through my window and causes harm to my grandchildren or my family, I'm going to be in jail because I'm going to snap. Why is it that if I have a tree that's a danger to my family and is in my property, I have 4 corners. Mine's pretty much a complete square. It sits inside my property, which I have to pay property taxes on. The builder told me I'm allowed to cut it down. Well, the builder then said, no, it's up to the homeowners association. The homeowners association says, no, it's not. It's up to them. And they said no. And then I get second knowledge about a week later saying, no, it's up to the developer, the builder. So I'm getting a catch-22, just a runaround.
What neighborhood are you in?
Payne's Crossing. I have a tree that it literally, we've all had ice storms. We remember the ice storms 2009 coming down on to roofs and through windows. And even like storms. It is a danger to my home. I would like to cut it down. My neighbor, the man who lives next door, he had 3 trees. We were threatened if we cut them down, they will come and replant trees the same size, and we will have to pay the cost plus a $500 fine for each tree. He cut them down. They literally, while he was at work, came and replanted trees. I'm only trying to protect my family. I understand there's a need for a homeowner association to keep your neighborhoods clean and decent, but I'm trying to protect my family, and I'm getting told I can't cut this tree down because they want it there.
Well, now we do have, and this is a question to Andrew, in a homeowner's ordinance or association, does the city ordinance trump the homeowners?
Which ordinance are you referring
Well,
to?
if he says they can't cut the tree down because it's a homeowner association says you can't cut the tree down, if it's an endanger, do we not have an ordinance that says if it's in danger of life, liberty, limb, whatever, that the city can even deem that it needs to be cut and have the tree cut down? So does that not trump?
We do have an ordinance that says you cannot allow
Anybody-
trees on your property that become a danger to
Anybody with the city
persons.
council would be more than welcome to come out to my property and look at it, and you can tell the tree is over 30 feet long and it's only about 15 feet from my house.
Well, a suggestion I would make is to get with Andrew later, let him take a look at that and see if that has anything to do.
I can't help you with the problem with them coming and planting another one, though.
Well,
I mean, we
how
can
about
tell you
if
that
it's my property,
we can tell you that
if it's my property, they're not allowed on it, correct?
There's a landscape easement in that neighborhood that allows, when you back up to the bypass, don't you?
Yes.
There's a landscape easement, because I actually had to send police officers when they planted those trees, that there is a landscape easement on that property.
Yeah. See how, I'm only trying to protect my family.
So now you're going to be fined by them for having endangerment to your family, and they're going to have to also charge you for the new trees and the $500 fine. So you're really in a catch.
Yeah. Now, I've never been a violent man in my life, but if that tree comes through due to a storm and hurts my family members, Omni's in a world of shit. I'm sorry. But I'm trying to protect my family, sir.
Mr. Atwood, you've made it real clear what you're going to do if the tree falls down.
Yes.
And we've made note of your comments for this public hearing and would encourage you to get with the city attorney afterwards and see if there's any assistance we can offer. We're probably
have a card?
probably not going to solve this in this public hearing tonight.
It just hurts when they tell me I'm going to get fined if I cut a tree down for my own protection.
Yes, sir, we understand that.
I understand the need for a homeowner association to keep neighborhoods beautiful. That's why I bought in Payne's Crossing. I love the neighborhood. But when I got a situation, we had a tornado come in October and my house sustained a lot of damage. That tree was literally touching my house. All it needed was another big gust of wind and it was coming through my window.
Yes, sir. Is there any other comment that you have about the HOAs?
Actually, another one with homeowners or Omni. We're told if we have a pool, it has to be an in-ground pool. Well, I can't have an in-ground pool because our fence restrictions are only 4 foot. And if you have a pool, there's a restriction that says it must be, I believe, 8 foot to keep people from getting in and drowning. If somebody could jump in and drown, and next thing you know, I get sued because I didn't have the proper fence. But proper fence says it can only be 4 feet. Am I correct on the, yeah?
4 feet.
So why do we have homeowner associations that have little catch-22 runarounds?
Might check with the building code folks downstairs about what your fence requirements are, just so you're absolutely sure. Yeah. Because that's what drives, the building code is what drives that fence height requirement for pools.
I think you're too tall. I don't think it quite has to be that tall, but.
6 foot, I think.
I think it's 6.
Yeah, 6 foot, I can't have a 6-foot fence, it has to be 4 foot.
Well, we've got pools in town that have 4-foot fences around them, so if that, he's right, then we have to check on that too.
2 other things about Omni is, okay, I'm very active in my community. Take for instance, they have a rule about signs in your yard. It was the election this past, November? I had a sign in my yard supporting somebody. It was the very next day, I get a letter from Omni telling me my sign has to be removed. And this was an election, I mean, I'm not allowed to support my friends running for public office. It could have been your sign, sir.
It could have been.
I think there's several communities got that though.
But they can't, that can't be enforced.
No, it can't be
That's a
enforced.
constitutional
Right.
thing.
But they,
Yeah.
I got a letter telling me to remove my sign. Yes.
If we can get back to the public hearing.
I'm sorry.
And we appreciate your questions. We're not going to be able to answer all of your questions tonight. But do you have other statements or questions?
One more thing,
Yes,
it's,
sir.
I see basketball goals all over the neighborhood. I got a letter in the mail from Omni concerning my basketball goal. It's the kind that has a concrete encased into a hard plastic. Okay, it has wheels, you can wheel it out and wheel it back in. I know we're not supposed to have them out on the road. Mine's in my driveway. They told me I'm not allowed to have it in my driveway, that I have to store it in my garage. That is not the kind of homeowners association we need to tell us how we gotta live.
Yes, sir.
And that's, something needs to be done about Omni. They're out of Louisville. How is somebody out of Louisville gonna tell me how I have to live? No, sir, I don't think so.
Did you get a copy of the restrictions when you moved in? Did you get that?
I didn't get it until after I signed. If they had showed me a copy of all my stuff, I would have never built a house in,
Well, that's probably part, that's where
Yeah,
they,
they-
the ordinance, they could do, would alleviate that if people have it.
now this builder, this Dominion Homes, they changed names to Syntex just to get out of lawsuits for some reason. They're deviating around the system. Yeah, if you try to go talk to them, they'll say, we can't talk to you. You bought a Dominion home. I said, well, yeah, you built it. He goes, well, we're Syntex now. I don't care. You're still the builder. That doesn't change. Just because you change your name doesn't mean you didn't build our subdivision. Well, we can't deal with Dominion because we're not Dominion anymore. We're Syntex. And I'm finding out information that the Omni is owned by Dominion Homes. That is a major problem when you got a homeowner association being paid by the builder who's actually basically they're owning the homeowner association.
Yes, sir.
I just want to be, my main complaint is the tree. I just want to protect my family. But getting told if I cut it down, I got to pay a $500 fine and they're going to come back and plant another one. The police were there to allow the people to plant the trees. So, are you telling me I can't cut my tree down to protect my family?
Mr. Atwood, I'm not telling you anything. We're simply having a public hearing and listening to everyone's concerns. We can't answer all your questions in this venue tonight.
I just thought I would get some kind of legal answer as to whether or not I cut my tree down. I guess it's got to be researched by the city attorney.
You're at the wrong meeting. We'd be glad to discuss those things with you.
Okay.
but probably not in this setting on all the
I
time.
understand, this is just a preliminary hearing to get complaints and issues out.
Yes, sir.
Can I get a card from Mr. Hartley there, how to contact him?
I don't have a card with me, but you can call City Hall and get me anytime.
You'd simply call
863-9800.
9800, and Mr. Hartley would be available for you.
Okay, could you research that possible, that law that trumps?
I have to look at the individual facts
Okay.
of your property.
Thank you all very much.
Yes, sir, thank you.
I would really, I'm sorry, I would kind of like to add on to what he says, maybe in a more generalized way. Can I quickly?
Yes, ma'am, if you'd come to the podium. And your name, ma'am?
Erin St. Charles. I live, I guess it's Whistler Estates. It's off of Leesburg Road, so I'm not sure that's technically in the city. But I think the gentleman brought up a really good point, and we are having some issues, my husband and I, with our homeowners personally, and so are some neighbors of ours. Where does the consistency come from? Who's responsible for maintaining that consistency within the HOA to enforce all of the restrictions upon all of the neighbors and not pick and choose whose basketball goal is allowed or whose propane tank is allowed and whose isn't, whose trailers are allowed in their driveway, to have all of the restrictions enforced and not just say, you're breaking that restriction, we're going to go after you, yet there's 10 other neighbors that are also breaking restrictions. So I think that the homeowners associations need to be held accountable in some way for that consistency. And we were also another family, I guess, that was told when we bought our 5 acres that there was no homeowners association. And so I think having some sort of database or whatever, some avenue to find out that correct information easily would be extremely helpful. We love our 5 acres. We really like our neighborhood and we enjoy it, and we came from Canewood. So I am not sure that if we had known that there was a homeowners association, perhaps some of our that responsibility is on us for not perhaps trying harder to find that out, but I'm not sure that we would have bought there. I'm not sure that we would have built there. I think we probably would have gone a little further out where there wasn't a homeowners association. And I guess that's kind of it. Just
What's your neighborhood? I'm sorry.
Erin St. Charles.
But what's your neighborhood?
I think it's Whistler Estates.
She's in the county. She's in the county.
I know.
Yeah.
Off of Leesburg?
Yeah, it's off of Leesburg.
Left,
Yeah, so, but I mean, just having that database, that information available, and having the consistency within the homeowners association, and also having clear definitions within the restrictions and having clear definitions within the bylaws. I don't know if that's the right place for this or if that's, something that comes to your attention or somebody else's, but wording and like with the fences, the 4-foot or the 6-foot, having that type of consistency with building codes and or with satellite dishes with FCC regulations and stuff, I think is really needed.
Thank you. You two have been standing here, and then the gentleman that's had his hand up here, and I'm going to get to everyone just as quickly as we can.
Thank you. I'm Andrew Hill. I also live in the Paynes Crossing subdivision. I don't have nearly the passionate complaints about Omni that some people in our neighborhood do, but I know a lot of our neighbors do. One of the biggest issues I think with that, there are a lot of people in our neighborhood that want to get rid of Omni as our neighborhood. It's the neighborhood association management company that was sort of forced on us by, excuse me, by the builder, originally Dominion Homes, now Centex. There are a lot of people in our neighborhood that want to get rid of them and establish our own HOA. There are varying opinions about whether that's a good idea or not. Although hearing some of the success stories tonight from what some of you all have done, I think it's actually much better of an idea than I thought when I came here. But I think a lot of the issues that we have stem from the fact that we as homeowners don't have any sort of representation at all with our HOA. Omni sort of operates as an independent company. We have deed restrictions that are, as far as the clarity of them goes, I would characterize them as fair to middling, maybe. There are some good restrictions that I think help our neighborhood look nice. I think there are some that could be adjusted, but we have no say in that. What we have is a private company that seems to operate at a profit to themselves by collecting our homeowners association fees. They present us with a budget that includes anywhere from $17,000 to $18,000 for maintaining the common areas, which I'd say they do. What would you say, a fair to middling job
It's
doing?
It's about an acre and a half.
Yeah, it's and we provide we pay our HOA dues. We're given a budget as to that details what they're supposed to be for. We have a really difficult time getting any sort of expenditure report from them that shows, okay, we actually only used this, or we used more than this, or it was a surplus. I lived in a neighborhood in Nicholasville where if there was a surplus of our HOA fees, that it was given back to us. It was given back to us, and we were provided a detailed description of what the HOA fees were going for and why we were getting a refund, or why our fees were increasing. We don't really get an explanation like that from Omni. And again, I think it really stems. I think a lot of our problems with Omni could likely be solved if there was just something in the ordinance that says if you're a private company that operates an HOA, you must have a certain amount of representation from your residents to have some kind of input on what the ordinances are and get some.
Or only residential management.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Having outside management in your residence. Yeah.
And I don't think outside management is a bad idea as long as it's done the right way. A lot of times outside management companies have more resources and experience in handling maintenance issues than, especially if we're talking about HOAs taking over maintaining runoff, which is a whole separate issue, obviously.
Yeah, this neighborhood's been in development for about 10 years.
Yeah.
and Until it's completely finished, the residents don't get any input into this homeowners association.
Do you want to go ahead?
Yes, sir.
I'm
all set.
Thank you very
As
much.
in zero.
And your name, sir?
My name is Lanny Brannock. I live there as well. And they also have several unconstitutional deed restrictions, such as giving private citizens access to the property to police deed restrictions and no signs supporting political candidates. As far as I can tell, those are not constitutional, yet you can't live there unless you sign the documents. So another problem with this particular homeowners association is, unlike the folks here that can't get their stuff accomplished, ours is the exact opposite. They have a woman that comes through pretty consistently and writes citations for things that don't exist. I'll give you an example. There's a lady that lives right next to him. She was cited for having an illegal fence. And she thought that was odd, so she called the company and said, I don't have an illegal fence. And they said, yes, we verified actually that you have an illegal fence. I drove by there earlier today. They still don't have a fence.
They don't have a fence.
They've never had a fence, and they don't plan on having a fence. So one of the issues I'd like to see addressed in this is, if there's going to be an association that's outside of our state, I think they're in Columbus actually, and they are going to police the deed restrictions, that the deed restrictions are constitutional and legal, and it's done in a reasonable manner, because the recourse that we have right now is to say, hey, you're not right. And they say, but we are right. It says here in the letter that we're right. What recourse do we have? And I know Mr. Swanigan lived there too, so he's dealt with this. Am I saying anything that's... So this is the nightmare that is our situation. Everyone has their individual nightmares, otherwise they wouldn't be here, but that's ours. So it would be nice to have some say-so in the meantime before the neighborhood's completely developed. And it'd be nice for the their deed restrictions to be constitutional.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Never heard that before.
Yes, sir.
My name is Chris Chorvis. I moved here recently from Michigan. One of the reasons why I chose the subdivision that I chose was because of the deed restrictions that I asked for from my realtor. And I don't know if he was obligated to give them to me, but I requested them. And one of the reasons why I requested them right from the beginning is because that helped me determine what subdivision I wanted to live in. So I am like some of the other voices that were heard, are very happy with my deed restrictions. And as a matter of fact, I want to make sure that they're enforced because that's why I chose to live there. So I'm encouraging this being a public hearing. You want to hear our voices. So my voice is to have consistency with enforcement, have enforcement, and also make sure that homeowners are, required, the developers and the builders are required to provide that. Some homeowners are more diligent in asking for it, but, some of the complaints that I hear maybe is because they didn't receive their deed restrictions or their covenants. At that point, if they have to, provide a copy to the homeowners, then those homeowners can make a decision if they want to live in that subdivision. Because, so if the deed restriction says that you can only have a certain size fence, that was in your deed restriction and you made a conscious decision on whether to move in that subdivision or not. And that falls with all of the other restrictions, pools and such, okay? Like right now in Pleasant Valley, what I'm seeing that's disturbing to me is that there are pools that are being, above ground pools that are being, that have been put in. That's in the deed restriction, you're not supposed to have that. This is a free country, and I don't think that people should be made to do things that they don't want to do, but you lived in a subdivision that required you not to have a pool, but because the homeowner association hasn't been completely informed yet, I'm being told that people can put up pools and do the things that are restricted. So I don't know, and that's a question that I wanted to ask, but before, if you can answer that, fine. If not, that's okay too. But what I'm stressing is that some of the comments from people that I've heard in this meeting and also in other forums is that, no homeowner association is going to tell me how to live. The homeowner association covenants are there, and you have a decision to make when you move in there. If you don't like those things, then don't move into that subdivision. But I made that decision to move in that subdivision because of them, so then don't turn around and say that I'm a bad person if I or any of the other members that are required to enforce those things do that. Okay, so I would ask again that you guys make sure that when you create this ordinance that you keep that, my concern is to have enforcement, because otherwise it's the Wild West. And I had another comment is, I don't know if the ordinance, if you're taking into consideration to have some kind of a min-max homeowner association's fee. That's something that my wife and I battled over, because when we moved, we were told that that wasn't set yet. So we have some uncertainty there. In the beginning, you eloquently said, Mayor, about removing the uncertainty, having transparency. Nothing could be better when somebody is moving from another city into a new city. We moved in with some uncertainty, and we were bothered by it. If you could help in the ordinance remove that uncertainty, the more you're going to have stability, and encourage development. So I think you already said that, but I wanted your hearing, in a public hearing, I wanted to reinforce that. And grandfathering items, I don't know how you're going to deal with that. So for example, the pools and the fences are things that were put up in violation. This ordinance is going to address that. That kind of was the question I asked before. Can you answer that now, if you know if it's going to address that?
I think that ventures a little farther than we had intended to go to dig into the private matters that the HOA is not enforcing, but to sort of step back and say, we want to make sure that they have the proper tools and that they have the Constitution to make those changes, but not to interfere with what is essentially a private contract. between the homeowners. So I think stepping in and actually digging into actual controversies that you have is beyond where we're thinking with this ordinance.
Okay. Yeah, then just encourage whatever you do with transparency and, the ideas of posting things on the website as far as the homeowner associations, listing of directors and things like that. That would be very helpful for somebody that's new, that just moved in. Those are the comments that I have, so thank you.
What neighborhood are you in? I'm sorry.
Pleasant Valley.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Reggie Gentry. I live in Paynes Crossing, run by Omni. Paynes Crossing has a big green space. And I think anything that deals with the homeowners associations needs to specifically say that the green spaces need to be mowed. The rumor around my subdivision was that the zoning people refused to inspect the houses unless that green space was mowed. Well, the green space was mowed. And it was mowed regularly after that, up until the last 3 or 4 weeks. It hadn't been mowed. So about green spaces being mowed regularly, not the common area where everybody sees, but there is green spaces. And of course, please keep the motorcycles off of them too. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Danny Rakencraft, I also live in Paynes Crossing. The other thing that I'd like to add to what the gentleman reiterated was that we have no say-so in our homeowners association. We don't know who governs it. We can't speak to who governs it. So if we have concerns, we can't pass that along. I recently made a phone call to the lady that does the enforcement of our restrictions and stuff, and she therefore informed me that I do not have the right to know who sits on that board. So that's my concern is I think as what he said is we should have some say-so in our subdivision, and I think it should be in the ordinance to say, yes, there has to be a certain percentage of homeowners that sits on the board, not just builders and contractors.
I agree with you.
Thank you.
Sir. Pat?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. I'm not totally convinced yet. I've heard a couple people say that since they've come to the meeting, they're convinced that we need an ordinance. I'm sorry. For the record, my name is Patrick Farley. I currently live in what most people know as Bradford, but I still cling to the fact that it's Hambrick. And I've lived there for almost 20 years without a homeowners association. And I love the fact that I don't have a homeowners association. I do have a for sale sign in my front yard if anybody's looking for a house. It is for sale, and I'm moving to Pleasant Valley, and it scares me a little bit now because of some of the things that I'm hearing. I'm not that frightened. I'm not afraid to say what I need to say. I just have a few questions, and they're mostly directed toward the council. Earlier, I heard you say something about not spending tax money on private property. But we're getting ready to create an ordinance that would govern private property. And that concerns me a little bit. We're going to turn our city council into a homeowners association governance committee. And I don't want that. I want you to take care of my protection. If my home is on fire, I want to make sure that you've hired capable and trustworthy people to police and protect my community, take care of the city issues, not the issues that I should be taking care of with my neighbors. I feel very confident that if I have a dispute with my neighbor, I can handle that on my own, and I don't need people that sit on my city council to do that for me. So that's my concern. And then you also said something else. If planning and zoning required the common areas, and I hear that a lot now, we have these common areas in these subdivisions because that's what planning and zoning requires. I'm in the process of buying a home. The builder is telling me that. We have common areas because that's what planning and zoning requires. If you're requiring something of that developer, then you have the responsibility, or should assume the responsibility, of the things that you are requiring of them. That's another concern of mine. Again, we're turning our city council into an HOA governance committee, and that's hugely disconcerting to me. And then Mr. Lanter earlier said that if the answer is no, don't be afraid to say no. If someone calls and says they have a problem and their problem is something with a HOA that they have already agreed to, and they're trying to get you to belly up to the bar with them, then you should tell them no. That's not your responsibility. If someone lives in a subdivision with a good HOA, and I hear there are some, I'm glad there are. I'm encouraged that there are some good ones, and I'm discouraged about the ones that I hear that are bad. And I hope that if there is an ordinance, that some of those problems are addressed. But please keep in mind that when you come to council and you spend an hour and a half talking about HOA issues and 15 minutes talking about problems with hiring police officers and firemen and taking care of the city, if you're spending more time talking about HOA issues than you are talking about city issues, you're no longer city council, and that scares me. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Why don't we let everybody speak once, and then if you'd like to speak again, we'd be glad to hear from you. Steve, you've had your hand up for quite some time.
My name is Stephen Price. I live here in Georgetown at 167 Rucker Avenue. Can everybody hear me?
Steve.
I guess I'm fairly unusual in that I work in the outdoors, dawn to dusk, every day. I'm a professional horticulturist. I chose that profession because I know, and I think you would have to admit, that anybody who produces at home what he consumes is going to get a better product. So in working outdoors to produce my food and to some extent fiber for making clothing, and to a greater extent timber for building, I find myself working in the outdoors all the time in the neighborhood where I grew up here in Georgetown. And I'm acutely, let's just put it this way, I'm upset by machinery noise, and a lot of the comments I've heard tonight have been demands for mowing. And I just want to say that the way mowing has become a mechanized process, for somebody like me, I don't use any machinery. I mow, but I mow with a scythe because I don't want to make noise to disturb anyone, and I don't want somebody's machinery noise disturbing me. So I say to myself, I'm going nuts for years in the outdoors. I'm doing all my work peacefully and quiet. All these neighbors are totally, inconsiderate of my peace and quiet. So I do some research, and this was what I'm here to tell you. there is a whole raft of legal authority for anybody in Georgetown to stop mowing and to allow the green spaces about which we've heard, communal as well as private property, to vegetate naturally into trees and into herbaceous vegetation, a lot of which is edible or otherwise useful. And I'm not going to take a lot of time. If you're interested, I'm in the phone book. My name is Stephen Price, and I can inform you in detail as to your legal options to not mow. And the legal option, I'll just run by them. I'm not going to describe them, but I will tell you
Steve,
that
do you have any comments
KRS
about?
413.072.
Yeah, Steve, do you have any comments or questions about homeowners associations, which is the?
Well, yeah, this
point
is
of
about the
this here?
homeowners association because
It's not about your right to mow or not to mow. This is a public hearing to take comment on a proposed
right, but
homeowners
the
association.
newspaper, Tom, it says the newspaper that made me aware of this meeting tonight refers to mowing issues at least twice, and that's why I came. And I read the Herald Leader, and a whole lot of what the homeowners association do in Fayette County has to do with mowing. And I've heard, as I said, everybody here, a lot of people have talked about mowing here tonight. So if you don't like what I have to say, may I just simply describe these enumerate the legislations. If anybody's interested, they can call me for the details.
It's not that I don't like what you have to say, Steve. It's just we have a hearing and some great citizens who have shown up to help us, and I just want us to stay on track. I'd be glad for you to give them your contact information, and if they'd like to have future conversations with you. But I don't think this is the forum to rehash mowing versus not mowing.
Well, then you're going to dispute the news graphic. The news graphic said you were going to discuss mowing tonight, and that's why I'm here. So I'm not wanted. I'll tell you my name again, Stephen Price. I'm in the phone book, Georgetown phone book. I live at 167 Rucker Avenue. If you would like to understand federal, state, and local ordinances that permit anyone in Georgetown to not mow and to cultivate their property for trees, beneficial herbaceous vegetation, shrubs, ferns, wildflowers, grasses, hay, please call me. My number, if you want to jot it down, is 863-6570. Thank you.
Thank you. Roy?
Roy Cornett, live out in the county. I've got a lot of property here in the city. Want to start off with, Mayor, your opening comments were excellent. I found myself thinking back to 20 years ago when you talked about the bypass. I just want to thank you for your leadership.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I'm a real estate appraiser by trade, and so all the associations that we've been talking about here, I've been in doing appraisals. And let's face it, our society works around money. There's things going on in your neighborhood that impacts the values of your property, as in the neighborhood gossip. And you saw that in Canewood. Canewood values did struggle because of all the racket that was going on out there for a few years. The leadership in the association out there stepped up the plate and got things cleaned up. Now, there was two sides of that fence out there. I don't think the developers were totally at fault. I think it was a breakdown of communication. The lesson I want to point out here, I think, is that we're missing the education that somebody mentioned and the venue by which people can get educated on what's going on in their associations. And I think the central warehouse, if you will, or website where the realtors in the world, the buyers in the world can go to systematically and find out what's going on will help immensely. I, as an appraiser, have had immense problems finding out what the status is on associations throughout central Kentucky. Is the association up and running? How much are the dues? What are the restrictions? There's no central way of getting that. And Lexington does, in fact, have a pretty systematic way of finding them. We don't have that here. One thing I'll caution you on, and I don't want to step on any toes, but sometimes there's a disconnect between the planning and zoning, TVA, city council, fiscal court. Where is that central warehouse going to be that's easily found? I don't have an answer to that. Just be aware that there's sometimes some confusion there. But as far as any particular association, I live in Ironworks Estates, which goes great. There are, in fact, a lot of examples of good ones throughout the city and county. I think that what the key is to any of them that work well is having good leadership. The people that are willing to take the time to provide the leadership in these associations, my hat's off to them. I'm the guy that calls sometimes looking for information, trying to find out, and it's hard to get. And the people that take the time to talk to me, I appreciate. But I appreciate your all's leadership on taking the time to try to think this thing through. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
My name's Matthew Nunn. I live in Canewood Reserve, so I do have a vested interest
Matthew
in Nunn, N-U-N-N. Yeah.
Thank you.
First of all, I apologize for my self-interruption earlier. That was rude. I apologize. I've heard two conversations tonight. One about what HOA should and should not be able to do, and then I'll talk about that one first. And I tend to agree with the gentleman that spoke previously. I don't think that's the business or the role of city government to be involved in how HOAs operate. Those are private contracts that you can enter into freely, and if you have enough of your fellow homeowners and you want to change the contract, you have that option as well. So I don't think that's a business that the city government needs to get into. However, what I thought this meeting was about, and I have heard some discussion about it, is how developers should interact and behave in terms of, plotting land and developing property. And I do think that is the role of government, to protect citizens and their interests. So I encourage the council to move forward with an ordinance that would address how property is developed in Georgetown and Scott County as a whole. That's going to be a fiscal court issue. And in that ordinance, if you do proceed with that, I would encourage things not just about quality of structures. Obviously, that's important, but also public safety things. In Canewood Reserve right now, we're seeing a lot of dumpsters parked on streets, and I've seen a lot of close calls already with kids on bicycles and cars that can't see them because our streets right now are lined with dumpsters. I don't know how to solve that issue, but I think smart people could get together and figure out a good resolution for that. And then also properties that are under development currently they're nuisances. I understand building materials need to be there, but garbage does not. I worked through college, I worked on construction sites, we picked our trash up every day at the end of the day. That's not happening now. So again, I encourage an ordinance that does regulate how property is developed, how developers operate, and then also addresses public safety concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Comments.
I do have a question that I think you might be able to answer. When a developer...
You need to come up to the podium, man.
So when a developer or a builder starts an HOA when they are developing a property, it's my understanding that there has to be a percentage of homes built before there can be homeowner representation on their HOA. Is that not correct? I think in most cases that might be correct.
I'm not aware of a law that says that.
No, I'm
Might
not
be
saying there's a law.
practical.
No, I'm just saying, from what I've seen here, this is kind of how it seems that they operate. If that were the case, or if that is the case, when the homeowners take over the HOA, is that HOA document or agreement, is it grandfathered to the homeowners that take over the HOA? Or can they rewrite the whole thing when it changes hands?
I'm going to assume that if you have enough votes to change those documents within the governance structure, that you would be able to do that.
I just wondered, I know somebody talked about it earlier.
Ours has a limit, a time frame on it. Outside of that time frame, then potentially, however, there's a clause in ours that until the developer's completed, he may not be completed for 20 years.
And
therefore, that's something that needs to be addressed.
Right, and
A
that's
reasonable frame of time.
right. That's kind of my point. These HOAs that are developed by the developer/builders, they're written to suit them, to benefit them. It has nothing to do with the homeowners. They are merely collateral damage for whatever the developers and builders decide their HOA is going to govern. And I think that's wrong. I think that there, like you say, there has to be some reasonable limits. And that's what, if the city council is going to write this ordinance, you have to keep us as the focus, not the developers and the builders. And I know I said that before, but I just wanted to ask that question. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Denny, you've been very patient. If you'd like to come back to the podium.
Yeah, this is some things that some people said. I just wanted to revisit because, like one gentleman said, you all don't want to be a big HOA management team. So the place where you want to put your foundation probably is an ordinance to the building, planning, zoning, developing part is where you're going to make sure that the homeowners are protected. They do have reasonable time limits. Again, we have the issue of is planning and zoning saying there has to be green space? If that's the case, how is the homeowners association going to be held accountable for that when they are required to have it? Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. A lot of people have said that they didn't even know they had an HOA when they purchased their property. We did buy Ball Homes, we built. I asked repeatedly, and I still have the emails, while we were building, if my rep could send me any HOA covenants that were available for me to look over. Before we actually closed, I got no response, none. And I sent another email and I said, please, would you, it was actually Scotty Floro from All Homes, and I said, if you have something for my neighborhood, I would like a copy of it before we close. This is something that needs to be made for builders, needs to be made available to prospective purchasers before they put that deposit down on the property. If there's an HOA for their development, and they show you this little piece of paper with 5,000 little pieces of lots, and so they say pick your lots, there needs to be, at that time, at that meeting, they need to be able to present their covenant, their HOA contract. We got our contract at closing. We had no time to look over it, no time to back out. We had already put deposits down. We'd already put deposits down to build. That is an inappropriate time to show a person the HOA covenant and agreement. Do you think that's an appropriate time? Would you want to know at closing or before you build? Because you can make other choices.
Yes, ma'am.
You can choose to build somewhere else that has a more agreeable to your lifestyle. Like, I agree that I also want HOA rules because I want to protect my property value. I've put over $250,000 into my house. I don't want to live next door to the next episode of Hoarders or, So yeah, that definitely has to be done, but you all don't want to manage that. The first thing you want to do is just make sure that in the building, planning, and in the purchasing process, the closing attorney and the realtor for people that are buying rather than building, those things need to be available before closing. So there has to be some way to keep records of which property, which neighborhoods have homeowners associations, what they are, copies of the covenant, so that each realtor can have access to those to show their clients. The time to know is not after closing.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that all this needs to be discussed and given? Realtors and closing attorneys need to present this before you buy. Builders, before you even sign the $500 lot deposit.
Yes, ma'am, we understand.
Okay, so if you all do an ordinance, that really needs to be included, that
everybody needs to know what the HOAs are and what property and what neighborhood. They need to have time to think about that before closing.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others that would like to address the council? If not, let me say, for those of you who are remaining and who have stayed the course of this long evening, express our appreciation for your willingness to share your ideas, share your concerns and your experiences. We've taken notes of each of your comments. Council's listened attentively, and we're going to digest what you've told us. And I think it's going to take some real consideration and some reflection on behalf of the city council members to internalize what you said and help us be prepared to move this process forward in the way that represents your interests the most. Any council comments in closing?
A couple comments was made that we're going to govern the HOA. Well, we're not. We're going to represent the community, the citizens, so that their HOA works for them. We're not going to be involved in the HOA. You just want to make certain that everybody has their HOA and they're treated the way it's supposed to be and they do what they're supposed to do. We're not going to govern the HOA. We're just going to have an ordinance that states this is what you should be doing for your community.
Thank you.
And then without that ordinance, we can't do nothing anyway with them. So.
Any other comments from council?
Did you have another question or want to
I have
comment?
2 solutions. All deed restricted neighborhoods be required to present some kind of signage at the entrance. That gives potential buyers a heads up from the onset. And 2, raise developer/builder bonds to realistic amounts associated or related to the potential cost of finishing the development. $15,000 for my developer, when we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars at risk, is a joke. So, and then not for that to be adjusted or phased out without HOA oversight or someone in government actually looking at that property, that correlation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there no further comments from the, yes, sir?
I'm sorry, I do have one brief comment. I didn't say it earlier, I apologize. Matthew, again. So again, in Kingwood Reserve, you heard earlier, there's an ongoing issue, and there's houses that are being put up at a rapid pace. And as you know, once the horse leaves the barn, it's hard to do anything about it. So I don't know if there's anything council can do about ongoing construction or proposed construction, again, before the condition worsens. So.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's been a very productive evening. I think it's been very helpful for me and the city council, and we appreciate your help. Our meeting is adjourned.
2.5 hours. Hello, dear.